Hello, welcome to NC Exclusive with me, Gbenga Aborowa. My guest today was the youngest person in Liberia's history to be named Minister of State with that portfolio, as well as the chairman of the board of the Liberia Electricity Corporation. He holds a doctorate in rhetoric and professional communications and 2 master's degrees for government in New Mexico State University and public administration from Harvard University. In addition, he served as a principal advisor and project manager to the President of Liberia and was a leading figure in infrastructure development in Liberia from 2014 to 2018. Throughout his career, he has held a number of high-profile positions, including the head of Diaspora Engagement Unit, the Philanthropy Secretariat, and the President's Delivery Unit, which oversaw the implementation of priority projects. He has worked with multiple international organizations such as the World Bank, the United Nations, and the Africa Development Bank. My guest today, an NC exclusive, is Dr. Clarence K. Moniba. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Moniba, on today's NC exclusive.
Thank you very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be on here. Look forward to talking about Liberia and what we can do to continue to move not only our country, but our continent forward as well. So thank you very much.
We're happy to have you join us. Now, Dr. Moniba, as somebody that has served in government, you were part of the previous administration of President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. What do you make of the recent suspension of 3 government officials who were sanctioned by the United States Treasury Department for what he said was their ongoing involvement in public corruption? And how big of a problem is corruption in Liberia?
Thank you very much for that question. And first off, the 3 are not enough. It's just simply not enough. We live in a country where corruption is unfortunately rampant. There's absolutely no accountability in many instances and in many times throughout corruption. Normally in Liberia, we see corruption, we acknowledge it, and in many times we support corruption. And so this is a very good move in the sense of holding people accountable and putting people on a sanction list. But again, like I said before, it's not good enough. We have to do a lot more. Throughout Liberia's history, if you look at the last 30 or 40 years in Liberia, nobody has really gone to jail for corruption. So that should be the very first sign to show you that we haven't taken corruption serious enough in our history. In order for us to
Why do you think so? Because, I mean, if people go on, if there's a culture of impunity and if there's no punishment for acting in certain ways, then it means it's allowed. Why do you think there's this culture of impunity, and why is corruption not really clamped down upon in Liberia?
Well, again, I think it's societal in the sense that we have a very small country, and so everybody acts like they know everybody. And so as a result, instead of taking actions on one person who's going to be a family member, a friend, or a cousin, we let it go. And so that has festered throughout the entire history where it's like, well, one person got away with it. Why not let the other people get away with it? And so these are the challenges that we're facing. In order to be able to transition our country, we have to be able to hold people accountable. But not only that, we have to have people go to jail and also have restitution. So these are some of the challenges that we face.
Now, Dr. Moniba, I'm happy you mentioned the fact that in order to transition the country, to move forward and make it a country that is prosperous for everyone living in it, Liberia is one of the oldest republics in Africa. It has such a rich and also a long and tumultuous history. What should be priority for building a resilient and prosperous Liberia? Because you've had the best of both worlds. You've been in government and you've also have extensive experience in the private sector.
Mm-hmm. Right now when we're looking at Liberia, and the challenge we have in Liberia is that if you look similar to many other African countries, but Liberia is a little bit worse. Most people in 2022 live like they're living in 1922 or 1822, in the sense that almost 60% of the roads in our country are unpaved. 70% of the country has no access to electricity, no access to pipeline water. So when you start talking about developing and transforming our country into a better country, which is what we need and we must demand, especially our generation, we have to look at education, which every country has to. Mm-hmm. But in Liberia, for example, we're currently graduating high school seniors, college seniors, who can barely read and write. And so this is something, it should be a national shame, but it also should be a national emergency in the sense that where are we going if we're having high school seniors who can barely read and write? We need to focus on technical and vocational training to be able to build the country. We need to focus on, again, ensuring that most of the money that we generate at the country goes towards developing our nation. 70% of the country's resources go to reoccurring funds, salaries, perks, fuel slips, communication cards, things that will not build our country, things that will not develop our country. So yes, we have to look at the policies of this country and the budget, how we appropriate the finances, but we also have to look at the rudimentary cost, which is the education of our people as well, and the development of our people. How can we empower people to be able to build the country? These are issues that we have to be able to address, which unfortunately for us, we have not been doing.
Now, Dr. Moniba, you were the Director of Partnership and Resource Mobilization at the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf Presidential Center for Women and Development, and you also served on the administration. How receptive is Liberian society to women in positions of authority, and what role can they play in the politics and development of Liberia? And if I may also add this one, how was your experience working with Madam Sirleaf Johnson?
I'm sorry, say that last question again.
How was your experience working with Madam Ellen Sirleaf Johnson?
I look at Liberia and in the sense of Liberia is a country that, has really, I think, empowered a lot of women throughout our history, which I think is a huge plus for us. We have a lot of false and negatives, but, when you look at Angie Brooks, somebody who served at the United Nations at an extremely high level in the 70s. You look at us having the first woman president elected in history. Liberia, I think, tries to generate and empower a lot of women in our society, which is great, and we need more of it. We've been able to have high successes, but it's not at mass. It's not, we've had high successes, but we don't have that many. So we have to continue to do that. And that's one of the things that Ellen Johnson Sirleaf Presidential Center is focusing on. How can President Sirleaf identify women across the continent of Africa and give them that final push, that final step to be able to cross that mile marker? President Sirleaf always talks about the idea that women have to be bold, women have to be ambitious, and also disciplined in terms of reaching and achieving their goals. So that's what the Ellen Johnson Sirleaf Presidential Center is focusing on, identifying these high-level women across the continent of Africa. Currently, I think they're up to 27 or 28 different African countries that are represented through women's leadership, whether they're governors or mayors. And so that's a way, I think, to be able to push women forward in leadership positions of leadership.
What do you think is holding African women down from reaching the zenith and, breaking that glass ceiling?
I don't think there's any other way to deny it except the patriarchy that we have in our system and in our culture, in our tribes and villages, and basically how we've lived for hundreds and thousands of years. Traditionally, which is wrong, women are supposed to be in the kitchen, women are supposed to be raising a family. What we do have to realize is that women are just as qualified and competent and dedicated.
Hello, Dr. Moniba, are you there? Okay. I'm listening to you. Please go on.
Okay. Yeah, so what we have to do as an African society is to realize that women are just as dedicated and committed as any other man. So once we understand and realize that, then we start to take their full potential and make it so that, because women, as you look at women right now, they focus more on nutrition and healthcare and education. These are the building blocks for where and how we're going to build Africa, and particularly Liberia. So all of us need to ensure that women have the appropriate opportunities to be able to move up and advance. So, in Liberia, we have been, like I said, successful at it, having President Sirleaf, having people such as Angie Brooks, but we needed to do a lot.
Now, Dr. Moniba, we can't talk about, we can't have this interview without talking about your appointment as the former chairman of the board of the Liberia Electricity Corporation, because currently the electricity tariff in Liberia is among one of the highest in the world. Now, what efforts can be made to improve energy access for Liberians and local businesses and essential services across the country? Because we know how important electricity is.
Right. You see, the mistake I think we're making right now is that we're using somewhat of an antiquated system. We're trying to use expensive grid transmission and distribution throughout the country when we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the finances, and we definitely do not have the time to be able to afford access and electricity to all of our Liberian citizens. Like I said earlier, 70% of the people in this country have very limited, if at all, access to electricity. That's just not good enough for a country that's 2022. It's just not. So we have to start to focus more on off-grid technology, solar technology. You know, we have several villages in this country that have 10 homes, 20 homes, you know, that may have 100 or 200 people living there. You're not going to spend $200 to $300 million or $20 to $30 million taking a grid there, building a hydro to supply them.
Of going about these things. Yes, I'm listening to you, Dr. Moniba.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
No, I said there are smarter ways to go about this, and the technology is also available.
Absolutely. And we're not doing that right now as a country and as a continent. We're still trying to use, like I said, the antiquated ways of trying to bring access and power to villages and homes across Liberia, across Africa. But it's not cost, it doesn't make any sense from a cost perspective. We have to focus on new technology. We have to join the rest of the world in going into the 21st century. As we go, you know, into the middle of this century, we have to focus on solar and technology. Things of that nature is the only way we'll catch Liberia up, catch Africa up to the rest of the world.
Absolutely. Now, a vision of the future is a continuation of the work of your late father, Dr. Harry F. Moniba, Liberia's former vice president from 1984 to 1990. What's the project about, and what's your vision and dream for Liberia?
You know, and I'm glad you asked that question because, you know, there's always so many discussion points about where we want our country to be, what we need to see in a developed and prosperous Liberia. I'm very bold when I talk to people and I tell them, I said, right now, what we have in the country is not good enough. So therefore, I'm calling for a new Liberia. And when I say I'm calling for it, I mean my generation. You know, we have one of the youngest countries in the world. We have the 5th youngest country in the world. So when we talk about a vision of the future, when we talk about where we want our country to be, we're demanding, my generation is demanding a new Liberia that's led by people in my generation. You know, we have to be very clear. You know, the generation before us has gotten us in this situation right now where we're sending our children to third-floor classrooms, where I talked about we don't have access to electricity. In Liberia right now, we have to import almost 70 to 80% of the food that we eat. $200 million is spent every single year importing rice from places such as India and China when we should be and can easily be grown at in Liberia. So when we talk about a vision of the future, we envision, my generation envisions, where we're self-sufficient in food, where we have people who are educated both in you know, the regular education system, but also technical and vocational training. You know, we talk about healthcare right now. There's no hospitals in the Republic of Liberia that has 24-hour electricity. So that should let you know when we talk about a vision of the future, when we talk about a new Liberia, that's what we're demanding. And that's what we have to work towards. Again, what we have right now as a country, as a nation, is just simply not good enough. Our unemployment rates are extremely high. Healthcare is extremely low. In Liberia right now, when you get sick, you don't look for a hospital. You look for a plane ticket to leave the country. Again, that's not good enough. That cannot be good enough. And so when we talk about a new Liberia, when we talk about a vision of the future, that's what we envision, where the resources of the country is spent on everyone instead of the select few, instead of the very fortunate few who work in government at high levels. And so that's why corruption is extremely important to be able to fight right now. Like I said, we have a system and we have a culture in Liberia where we have mob justice in this country. Right now, if somebody comes in my community or in my neighborhood, and they steal a $50 phone, for example, that person will almost be beaten to death before the police gets there. Almost be beaten to death before the police gets there. But yet, we see government officials, we see civil servants who we know are stealing, and yet we do nothing. You know, we give them awards, we celebrate them, we empower them, we protect them. And so when we talk about a new vision, a new Liberia, a vision of the future, this is what we need. Better healthcare for all, better education for all. We have to focus on early childhood education. Right now, we don't do that. We have children going to school, sitting on dirt floor classrooms. Our teachers make $125 a month. Oftentimes, it doesn't get paid on time. So these are things that if we want to take the development and progress of Liberia serious, if we want a new Liberia, these are things that have to be addressed. We can no longer ignore the fact that we are in many ways behind other. So, you know, I always like to say, Liberia is way behind the countries that are way behind. And so that has a lot of truth to it. There's nowhere in our country, which is unfortunate, that we don't see poverty. And we have to be able to change that.
Quite a sad picture you just painted, Dr. Moniba, and it's quite unfortunate that that picture you painted replicates itself in a number of African societies and countries.
Absolutely.
And you did say that Liberia is the 5th youngest country in the world, and many African youths, not only Liberians, are dissatisfied with the ruling class and have little or no interest in politics because they believe politicians are all the same. You're an inspiration to many young Africans and Liberians. You've served at the highest levels of government and the private sector. Why is youth participation in politics important, and how can you get them involved?
You know, and so this is where now we have to be able to, when I talk to people, I tell people that we have to become the change that we want to see in our respective countries. So you go home tonight, you look in the mirror. Whoever you see looking at you, that has to be the person who's responsible to improve their own life, to improve their life of their community, and improve their country. So when we look at our generation, when we look at people who are 45 and under, we have to be able to take the responsibility to be able to say that we will not leave our country as we met it. As citizens, as people who love Liberia, as people who love Africa, we should be very dissatisfied with where we are as a country and as a continent. And so that's why when we talk about the implementation of better policies, the implementation of the law so people don't get away with corruption, when we talk about having a better and new Liberia, we have to be able to encourage people, well-meaning people. Right now, people join government a lot of times to gain, not to give. And so that's the mindset we have to be able to change. But because we are very limited in terms of our educational system, because there's a lot of poverty and you know, there are a lot of desperate people in this country. So because of that, we have lawmakers, we have candidates who show up with a bag of rice to give, but no policies, and we vote for that person. We need to start to focus on the ideology of people. We need to start to understand what the person wants to do, but not only, you know, what they want to do, but how they're going to do it. Once we start to identify people who are willing to put themselves, sacrifice their lives, to be able to say, I'm going to leave my country. In my case, I'm going to leave Liberia better than what I found it. Then we'll get more young people who are entering government to serve.
For the right reasons.
For the right reason, absolutely so. Right now, everybody is entering for the wrong reasons. Because in Liberia right now, when you look at the situation and the context we live in, the richest people are ministers and senators and government officials. So at the 8-year-old kid, at the 10-year-old kid, when you picture your life growing up, you picture yourself as a minister, not because you want to serve, but because you see the minister in the nice car, in the nice house. So, and then you also see business people, where in many other developed countries, the business people are the ones with the money and the resources. In Liberia, a business person, just like in many African countries, is the market woman. is the lady who's sitting under the hot sun, sitting under the rain,
Yes.
Hoping to make $3 to $4 a day, and then you see the minister making $5, $6, $10,000 a month in his nice car, in his big house. So the mindset that we then ultimately have is that in order to make money, I go into government. So then government becomes a business and not a way to serve. And so these are the things that we have to slowly start to transition. But because people make money in governments, they steal, and again, not everybody, but if you go in government and you steal and nothing happens, then what's the repercussion? Exactly. We have to start to hold people accountable.
Now, finally, before I let you go, Dr. Moniba, you wear many hats: author, actor, teacher, motivational speaker, and many more. What does the future hold for you? And are you interested in running for elective office in the future in Liberia? Your general elections come up next year.
And that's an interesting question because, like I said, I go around the country. I've been around the country several times now, talking to hundreds and thousands of people, talking about becoming the change that they want to see in our country. I also go around telling people that in order to fix this country, you have to be in the system to be able to change the mindset. But I always tell people that I cannot be somebody who goes and says, I want to run. It has to be something where we, our generation, the people in our country, the people in our generation come and say that we want you to run so that we can envision, and not only envision, but implement this new Liberia. So, I joke around with people and say the blood of my father, Dr. Harry Moniba, is in me. So yes, I'm interested in politics, but in terms of the good politics, where we lift Liberia forward, where we push Liberia forward, where it's equitable, where we punish people if they engage in corruption, where we educate our youth, and where we take care of our elderly and have healthy facilities for everybody. So, I'm not sure what the future holds, but I do know that whatever it is, I'm going to be, and I hope to be, one of the people who ensures that the betterment of Liberia is at the forefront, and that we have a better Liberia. And I leave Liberia better than how we found it.
That's a perfect place to live in. We do hope and pray for prosperous Liberia and Africa in general. Dr. Clarence K. Moniba, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on NC Exclusive. I do wish you all the best in your endeavors.
Thank you.
And I look forward
to talking to you. Thank you so much for having me on.
And visiting Liberia too sometime in the nearest future. Thank you.
You'll be my guest. Looking forward to having you here.
Thank you very much. And this is where we draw the curtains. And today's NC Exclusive, my guest has been Dr. Clarence K. Moniba, a former government minister in the Republic of Liberia and the youngest ever. I'm Gbenga Aborowa. Until next time on NC Exclusive. Bye-bye.